A black woman stayed silent as they accused her uncle. They called her a thief before she even opened her mouth. Then they called her a liar when she didn't try to explain. By the time the third accusation hit, they were already rewriting her story like she was dead and gone. But Ava Monroe was neither dead nor gone. She was waiting. It started on a sweltering Thursday afternoon in Lakemont, Mississippi, the kind of town where the air feels thick with secrets and sweat. The sun scorched the pavement like punishment, and Main Street smelled of gasoline, old fried chicken, and something else fear. That was the day Ava walked into Bear's Hardware to buy a can of paint and walked out in handcuffs. They said she tried to steal it. The clerk, a boy who couldn't have been older than 19 with a mullet and a God Bless America tattoo on his forearm, said he saw her stuff the can in her purse. There were no cameras in the store, no footage, just his word against hers. And in Lakemont, that was enough. By the time the sheriff arrived, she had already been sitting on the curb outside for 30 minutes, wrists zip-tied, sweat rolling down her temples. She hadn't said a word. Not to the clerk, not to the store owner, not to the 3 people who gathered nearby, with their phones out, none of whom intervened. One woman even muttered, "You people always trying to get away with something." Sheriff Earl Walker was a tall man with sun-scarred skin and a voice like gravel, soaked in bourbon. He squinted at Ava like she was a bug crawling across his front porch. "What's your name, miss?" Ava looked up. Her lips parted slightly. Then she closed them again. "You mute?" he asked. Still nothing. He leaned down, breath sour, smile condescending. "You got the right to remain silent, sweetheart, but it sure don't help your case." He wasn't wrong. Not in a place like Lakemont, a place where black folks made up 10% of the population and 100% of the arrests on the local police board. But Ava wasn't worried. Not really, because Ava Monroe wasn't who they thought she was. They booked her under the name Jane Doe when she refused to speak. Took her fingerprints, but the system returned no matches. No prior records, no hits, no flags. A ghost. They held her for 72 hours, and during that time, she never spoke a single syllable. They tried everything, coaxing, threats, even sweet tea and a prayer circle, but she just stared straight ahead, eyes calm, mouth closed. The story caught on quick. A silent black woman accused of theft in a small southern town. It made the local news, then the Jackson papers, then CNN picked it up. They called her the mute suspect. Hashtag spread like kudzu. Who is she? Lakemont Jane, speak Ava, speak. But Ava didn't flinch. She didn't tweet. She didn't speak. And she sure as hell didn't explain. I ended the day her arraignment came. The courthouse was packed. Locals in their Sunday best. Protesters in Black Lives Matter shirts. Media vans parked beside pickup trucks flying Confederate flags. Ava stood in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of her. She was thin, tall, with short crop curls and eyes that burned with something that couldn't be named. The judge, a man named Harold Claymore, cleared his throat. "Miss Doe," he began, "you've been charged with shoplifting, failure to identify, and resisting arrest. Do you have anything to say for yourself before we move forward?" Silence. The courtroom buzzed. Someone muttered, "She's playing games." Another said, "Maybe she don't speak English." Then it happened. Ava looked up, locked eyes with the judge, and spoke 5 quiet words. "I demand a jury trial." The room fell dead quiet. Even a stenographer gasped. Judge Claymore adjusted his glasses. "Well, so you do speak." Ava nodded once. "I do, and I know exactly what I'm doing." What no one knew not yet was that Ava Monroe had once been one of the most promising civil rights attorneys in the southeastern United States. Top of her class at Spelman. Harvard Law. Clerked for a circuit judge, then made her name suing police departments in Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida. Her cases were brutal. Her wins, legendary. Until 2 years ago, when she vanished from the public eye. Some said she had a breakdown. Others said she'd gone into hiding. But the truth was more complicated. Her sister, Lila, had been pulled over outside Memphis. Wrong place, wrong time. One broken taillight. One jumpy cop. One bullet. No charges filed. Ava never got over it. She left her job. Moved into a small trailer in North Carolina. Cut ties with her firm. Told herself she was done fighting a system that chewed people up and spat out justice like a bitter joke. But then she started hearing stories. Town after town. Traffic stops turning violent. Young black men being searched for nothing. Old black women humiliated in grocery stores. And then Lakemont. She picked it carefully. Quiet. Conservative. No body cams. No real press coverage. A place where protect and serve meant control and contain. She rented a car under a fake name. Bought a prepaid phone. Walked into Barrett's Hardware on purpose. She knew the store had no cameras. She knew the clerk had a history of posting racist comments online. And she knew the sheriff was up for re-election and liked to keep his arrest numbers high. Everything about this was a setup. Her setup. Act 2 began in discovery. Her public defender was a young black man named Kevin Lyles, fresh out of law school, shaking in his polished shoes when he first met her in jail. "I don't understand," he said, flipping through the thin case file. "Why didn't you just tell them who you were?" "Would it have mattered?" she asked. "A black woman says she's innocent in Mississippi? They'd laugh me out the building. But a mystery? That gets attention. That makes people listen." Kevin looked at her like she was either insane or a genius. "You planned this." "I planned enough." The real planning started once she had her jury trial approved. She began filing motions, yes, from jail. She cited precedent. She used loopholes. She demanded access to police reports, filed public record requests, and slowly, methodically unraveled the town of Lakemont from the inside. She found out the clerk who accused her had been cited twice before for falsifying reports. Once for accusing a black teenager of stealing a hammer he later paid for in cash. She found proof the sheriff had instructed officers to keep an eye on outsiders, especially those who looked suspicious. She even unearthed an internal memo referencing her case sent before her arrest, suggesting the town was prepared for media fallout. She leaked it all. Anonymous sources, emails to local papers, social media drops. By the time her trial began, the public opinion had begun to shift. She walked into the courtroom in a clean navy suit, hair pulled back, eyes sharp. Kevin stood beside her like a student shadowing a professor. The prosecution fumbled. Their witness, the clerk, cracked on the stand. Admitted he never actually saw her put the paint in her purse. Claimed he just felt it. The sheriff's testimony was worse. When asked why Ava had been restrained for 30 minutes before he arrived, he shrugged. Standard procedure. The video from a bystander's phone played in court showed Ava, calm, composed, saying nothing as the clerk yelled. Showed how no paint was found on her. Showed how she had offered to let them check her purse and was denied. Then Ava took the stand, and she told them everything. About Lila, about Memphis, about why she came to Lakemont, about the game's power plays when no one's watching. Her voice never wavered. Her hands didn't shake. "I stayed silent," she said, "because silence makes people reveal themselves." When court adjourned that day, the town felt different. A little colder, a little louder. Kevin drove her back to the trailer she was renting under her real name now. They didn't talk much, but as they pulled up, they saw something spray-painted on her front door. "Liar." Ava stared at it for a long moment, then said, "Let them write what they want. The truth's already out." The next morning, Lakemont woke to the stench of panic disguised as law and order. The sheriff's office released a brief statement blaming media misrepresentation and a calculated smear campaign for the growing unrest. But it was too late. Ava Monroe had gone from Jane Doe to something far more dangerous in their Aisa mirror. One they couldn't break. One that reflected everything ugly they had spent decades pretending didn't exist. She should have felt triumphant. But Ava didn't feel like she'd won anything yet. The charges had been dropped, but the war wasn't over. The courtroom might have cleared her name, but the town? The town still whispered, still watched, still waited for her to slip. Kevin warned her to leave. "They're not done with you," he said as he packed up the last of his case files. "This isn't the kind of place that forgets. You embarrassed them." "I didn't embarrass them," Ava said. "They embarrassed themselves." "Yeah, and now they'll punish you for it." Ava looked out the window. Across the street, a white man leaned against a pickup truck, arms folded, eyes fixed on her trailer. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just watched. She said nothing. but the weight of his stare sat heavy in her bones. Within days, the threats began. At first, they were just notes, slipped under her door, tucked in her mailbox. Sloppy handwriting, racial slurs, promises of justice the old-fashioned way. Then her tires were slashed. Twice. Then a dead cat showed up on her porch. The sheriff didn't return her calls. Kevin filed a restraining order against unknown parties. It went nowhere, and yet Ava stayed. She stayed because leaving would make it easy. For them, for the town, for the world. Because if every black person who stood up and told the truth ran when the truth got ugly, then nothing would ever change. So she stayed, and she worked. She knew she couldn't go back to being a lawyer not the way she was before. But she could do something better. She started gathering stories. It began with Ms. Helen Johnson, a 73-year-old woman who had been arrested 3 years ago for disorderly conduct after arguing with a white cashier who shorted her $10. No charges were ever filed, but she was held for 12 hours and left with bruises she still rubbed like fresh wounds. Then there was Tyler Reeves, 17, stopped while walking home from a football game. The cops said he matched a suspect description. The only description? Wearing red. Tyler was wearing his school's team jacket. Each person Ava spoke to shared a version of the same story, silenced, dismissed, humiliated. Alone. Until now. She rented out a small storefront near Main Street and painted the windows herself. Justice needs witnesses. Inside, she created a safe space where people could tell their stories. Record them. Write them. Speak them. Anonymously or boldly. She set up a website. Hired a videographer from out of town. Started collecting testimony like seeds scattered across the soil, waiting for the storm. And of course, the town pushed back. The mayor called her a troublemaker with an agenda. A city councilwoman said Ava was reopening wounds that had already healed. The sheriff, still licking his wounds from the trial, warned that her little project was creating division. But the people kept coming. An ex-cop came in one night after closing, asked if she had time to talk. His hands shook as he confessed that during his years on the force, he'd been told to keep a lid on certain reports, especially when the suspect was white. Especially when the victim wasn't. A school janitor recounted how the principal called her colored just last year in front of students. When she filed a complaint, she was reassigned to the boiler room. Every story was different. Every story was the same. Ava collected them like ammunition. Then she started publishing them, one by one. Names redacted if requested. Faces blurred when needed. But the words always unfiltered. The town couldn't look away. Neither could the outside world. It didn't take long for the media to circle back. Ava gave no interviews, no press conferences, but she kept publishing. Each new post was a crack in Lakemont's porcelain mask. And then someone went too far. It happened on a Wednesday night. Just past 10 p.m., Ava had just closed up the storefront and was walking back to her trailer when she smelled its smoke. Her door was on fire. The flames were small, but spreading. Someone had poured lighter fluid across the porch and set it ablaze. The smoke curled like fingers into the night air. Ava didn't scream. She grabbed her hose and doused it herself, called the fire department, who took their sweet time arriving. The sheriff came too, eventually, with a smirk hiding behind his badge. Could be kids, he said. Bored. Stupid. Could be domestic terrorism, Ava replied flatly. He scratched his head. Big words. She stepped close, try understanding them. The fire was ruled inconclusive. No suspects. No arrests. Ava didn't flinch. She moved into the back of the storefront and added a deadbolt. Kevin begged her again to leave. I can't protect you, he said. I don't need protection, she answered. I need truth. And you do too. The next morning, she posted a video. It was the first time she showed her face since the trial. She sat at a desk, no makeup, hair tied back, eyes heavy but steady. My name is Ava Monroe, she said. You've heard a lot of things about me. Zet elite, that I manipulated the system, that I brought chaos to this town. But I didn't bring anything that wasn't already here. I just turned on the light. She paused. And when you turn on the light, the rats start to run. The video went viral. Again, over 500,000 views in 3 days. People from all over sent messages, donations, letters. Some told her she was brave. Some begged her to come speak in their town. Some said she had changed their lives. But Lakemont only grew colder. Act 3 hadn't begun, but the air was shifting. One day, a white teenage girl came into Ava's storefront. Pale, nervous. She said her name was Hannah. She said her father was the assistant chief of police. She said she wanted to talk. Ava leaned forward. Tell me. Hannah pulled out her phone. I found something. The video she showed Ava was shaky, filmed through a crack in a door. It showed her father and the sheriff. They were laughing, drinking, talking about Ava. Let her burn, the sheriff said on screen. The more noise she makes, the easier to bury her when the time comes. Ava sat still. Why are you showing me this? She asked. Because I'm sick of it, Hannah whispered. And because I think they're planning something worse. Ava released the video the next morning. She didn't add music, didn't add captions, just posted the raw footage with the title, What Justice Looks Like in Lakemont. It exploded. This time, national media came flooding in. CNN, MSNBC, even Fox News. Journalists circled like sharks. FBI agents arrived quietly. Civil rights attorneys reached out. The sheriff went silent. Then, the final domino fell. A class action lawsuit was filed against the Lakemont Police Department led by Ava Monroe, with Kevin Liles by her side. Over 40 individuals signed on. More added their names daily. The assistant chief of police resigned. The clerk from Barrett's hardware vanished. The mayor refused to speak publicly. And through it all, Ava remained calm, centered, focused. She never raised her voice. She never threatened. She never said, I told you so. She didn't have to. Her silence had said it all. The town looked the same, but everything had changed. Lakemont's neat streets and painted porches now trembled beneath something deeper than scandal. Beneath fear, beneath reckoning. The people who once avoided Ava on the sidewalk now crossed to her side not out of camaraderie, but curiosity. Some lowered their eyes in shame. Some stared with defiance. A few muttered, thank you, under their breath like a prayer they weren't ready to say out loud. But Ava knew better than to mistake cracks for collapse. She knew this place. The system wouldn't fall with a single video, no matter how damning. And the men in power especially, those raised on silence and supremacy, weren't going to hand her the victory. They would claw at the dirt before admitting they'd built their house on it. So she didn't celebrate. She prepared. The class action lawsuit sent shockwaves beyond Lakemont. Civil rights groups arrived, offering legal teams, investigators, resources. Kevin worked night and day. Depositions piled up. Patterns emerged: arrests without warrants, ignored complaints, racial slurs logged and buried. They were building not just a case, but a mirror to hold up to the entire state. And then came a grand jury. The FBI's quiet probe had become a full federal investigation. Subpoenas were issued. Phones were seized. The sheriff tried to play victim, claiming Ava had led a social media mob to attack him. But his own word, the ones caught on that teenage girl's shaky video, betrayed him. Let her burn. Ava said nothing to the press, nothing on her site. But when the sheriff was finally indicted for obstruction of justice, misconduct, and conspiracy, she sat outside the courthouse with a simple sign on her lap. Silence isn't weakness. It's waiting. The photo went viral. Again. And then, for the first time in a long while, Ava Monroe disappeared. Not physically. She was still in Lakemont. Still walking to the storefront every morning, coffee in hand. Still listening to stories, filing evidence, hugging survivors. But online, she went dark. No posts, no statements, no interviews. Because this part wasn't about going viral. This part was about going deep. When the hearings began, they took place in a federal court 2 hours away. Kevin led the legal team, but Ava testified in person. Her statement was clear, composed, and without bitterness. The justice system didn't fail me, she said. It was never built for me. And I don't want revenge. I want repair. For me. For everyone who's ever had to swallow the truth, just to survive. One by one, more plaintiffs spoke. Some cried. Some shouted. Some simply read the words they'd carried for years in silence. White jurors wept. Black jurors stared ahead, unmoved. They had seen this show before. But something was different now. Ava had made it impossible to look away. And then the final witness stood. It was Hannah. She looked smaller than she had in the video. No makeup, hair pulled into a tight ponytail, hands shaking. "My father told me I'd regret this," she said, "that I was betraying my own blood. But I've watched good people disappear in this town. I've seen what silence costs. So, if betraying him means telling the truth, then let me betray him twice." She left the stand to a standing ovation. Weeks passed, then months. The trial concluded, and one morning, on a sunlit Tuesday in March, the court released its verdict. Guilty on all charges. The sheriff was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The assistant chief received 12. Two judges resigned. The city agreed to a multi-million-dollar settlement, and Lakemont's police department will be placed under full federal oversight. Kevin wept quietly in the hallway. Ava did not. Instead, she walked to the courthouse steps where reporters gathered like crows. She raised no fist. She held no sign. But when they shouted questions, "How does it feel? What's next?" she gave them 3 words. "I'm still listening." It was never about just her. The storefront remained open. She expanded it into the neighboring lot, started training young people in civil advocacy, set up scholarships, hired 2 formerly incarcerated women as full-time staff. People from other towns came to learn, to speak, to tell. She started a national initiative called the Listening Project. Chapters sprouted across the country. Atlanta, Detroit, Tulsa, Boston. A movement born from silence now echoed across America. But back in Lakemont, change was slower. Some people still hated her, would always hate her. That was fine. She didn't need their love. She needed their accountability. One spring morning, almost a year after her arrest, Ava walked through Lakemont's town square. It was quiet, peaceful. The trees were blooming. She saw a mural on the side of an old hardware store a young local artist had painted it without fanfare. It showed a black woman standing before a burning house, her face lit not by fire, but by sunrise. In one hand, she held a tape recorder. In the other, a broken chain. Ava stopped and stared. She didn't cry, but her throat tightened. "Ms. Monroe," a small voice asked behind her. She turned. It was a little black girl, maybe 9 or 10. Big eyes, holding a notebook. "Yes," Ava said softly. The girl hesitated. "They said you used to be a lawyer, but now you just talk to people." Ava knelt down. "That's right. Isn't that less important?" Ava smiled. "Sweetheart, listening to someone's truth might be the most important thing you can ever do." The girl looked down at her notebook. "Can I tell you something?" Ava opened her arms. "I'd be honored." And as the girl spoke about a teacher who always picked the white kids first, about classmates who mocked her hair, Ava listened. Fully, fiercely, as if the world depended on it. Because maybe it did. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and Lakemont bathed in soft gold, Ava sat alone on the porch of her trailer. The new one built by volunteers from 3 different states, funded by donations from strangers who now called her hero. She sipped tea, breathed. Somewhere in the distance, a choir rehearsed. Her phone buzzed with a message from Kevin. "You changed everything." She didn't reply. She didn't have to. Because deep inside her, beneath the scars and the silence, she already knew. She hadn't just survived. She had transformed. And she would keep listening until the whole world learned to speak.